Our film starts with a guy cruising down the strip in Hollywood. We see from his view that he is looking for some paid female companionship. He stops by a woman with a great pair of legs whose face we don't see and declares that he needs to discuss some business with her. He takes her back to a motel, and after some generic small talk, he turns off the lights and we see her emerge from the bathroom in a shadow creeping toward the guy. The next thing we see is the man's body arriving at the morgue, with the crew pointing out that all his blood had been drained. We then see a priest arrive at the morgue and request to see his body. The worker takes him in and then he leaves. When he tells his co-workers about the priest, they point out someone else is there claiming to be the victim's rabbi. When he goes back into the morgue, the priest is gone. The morgue worker, whose name is David, gets off and heads home with his live-in girlfriend Cheryl. As he's leaving, you see a mysterious woman in black watching them go off. The next day, we see a nurse meeting where the head nurse tells all the others about a new policy being put in place as blood is going missing from the blood bank. At the same time, David is approached at the morgue by a cop regarding the priest from the day before and wants him to come back to the station to try to identify him. He tells the cop they need to stop by the hospital before they go to the station, and there he gives a message for Cheryl to a nurse's aide named Mona, who apparently is new. Cheryl asks another nurse if they know what's going on with the blood, but the answer is still no. As she transports some blood to the blood bank, you see someone might be following her. She gets very paranoid and is startled by the maintenance worker coming off the elevator. As the cop drives back to the hospital to see Cheryl, he tells David that the victim was drained of blood via a bite and that it was a woman, as they joke about vampires. As he gets out of the car, he sees the priest again and goes to chase him. In another part of the hospital, a nurse heads into the blood bank and finds another nurse unconscious. That nurse is then attacked by the vampire. By the time David and Cheryl get in with security, the vampire had gone out the window, but both nurses barely survive. A distraught Cheryl is approached by Mona, telling her they'll be alright. The next night, we see the shadow of a woman approaching another man. His body then arrives in the morgue, drained of blood as well. This leads to David, now obsessed about the case, annoying people with questions. When he goes back into the morgue, two of his co-workers prank him by hiding in the drawers and leaving him the novel Dracula. He still doesn't get the point as he continues to annoy Cheryl with his obsession. Cheryl goes and visits one of the attacked nurses, who apparently is on life support. When David goes to visit, one of the doctors tells her she might be with the victim. As David heads to the room of the nurse, Cheryl is gone and the woman is gasping for air as her oxygen tube is disconnected. That's when David is attacked by the vampire. Just before she can bite him, a nurse walks in and the vampire jumps out the window. Detective Van Ness shows up and interrogates David and reprimands him for thinking a woman attacked him, looking at all the damage. We find out through this conversation that the vampire was successful in killing the nurse, whose name was Marge. David storms off in frustration that no one will believe him about the vampires and heads downtown to walk around and search for himself. As he does, he once again sees the priest, but now dressed in street clothes. He chases the guy down, and as he catches him, you see the shadow of a woman following them. He takes the guy, whose name is Paul, to a diner and interrogates him while the woman watches from the outside. The guy is kind of nuts and explains that now that he knows vampires are real, he'll never be the same, and he was excommunicated from the priesthood for trying to tell people about vampires and trying to kill her. He informs all of us that her name is Desire, and he's been following her for months. He also tells David that only a righteous man can take her out. When David goes to call Detective Van Ness about the new info he just got, Paul takes off. David then heads to his car when an attractive prostitute that matches the vampire's description walks by. He invites her into the car and ends up getting arrested for propositioning a prostitute, as she was an undercover cop. Cheryl, the saint and greatest, most patient girlfriend ever, bails him out. She tells him she wishes that he was going after the hookers because she's tired of the vampire obsession. As per usual, he continues to act like everyone else is the problem and not that he's acting like a nut job. After leaving a note for Cheryl, he goes to the police station and tells his story with all the info he got from Paul to Van Ness, which wouldn't be that bad if he didn't sound like a raving loony while telling it. The detective tries to tell him to back off because he sounds crazy and get help, which he should, but instead he just storms out. When he gets home, he finds Cheryl packing her things to go stay with a friend. She tells him not to call her unless his vampire fixation is over. She's still super sweet to him as he leaves, really driving home what a jerk the guy is. Obviously, he was totally broken up by it because right back to Hollywood he goes fishing for prostitutes. He thinks he's seen one, but turns around when he sees that she's black and heads back to his car. As he gets in, he's approached by Mona, who asks if he remembers her from the hospital and says she needs to talk to him and wants to buy him a drink. As he drives, he suggests going back to her place. We find out Mona, the nurse's aide, lives in a penthouse of a swanky high-rise. She explains she inherited it from her father, and when David asks what she was doing out, she explains that she's just a really bored rich lady who works in a hospital to pass the time and pretends to be a prostitute at night for fun, basically, but bails on any guy who propositions her. She then seduces and kisses David, but then heads upstairs to change. He starts hearing weird noises while grabbing another drink, and when he turns around, you see Mona in a nightgown doing the slow-motion sexy walk down the stairs with wind blowing through her hair. She goes to unbutton her shirt, but he stops her, asking to use the restroom. There he does his I'm a righteous man spiel into the mirror before heading across the hall and finding the body of Paul in the other room. Mona catches him and fangs out.
What a pity. Too bad our little fantasy had to end so soon.
I'm a righteous man. I am a righteous man. I am a righteous man.
No, David. You're like all the others. You wear your righteousness like a coat, so when it gets too warm, you can slip into something more comfortable.
He runs and slowly follows him Jason Voorhees style, explaining that she spared him in the past, but not this time. Again, he jogs past her, back to the room where Paul's body is, and grabs a cross.
Is it? I'm a righteous man. I am a righteous man.
He heads down the stairs, tripping along the way before jumping through a window as she continues to slowly chase him. He continues to claim he's a righteous man, and when she goes to pounce, he ducks and she falls off the balcony to her death.
I don't want you! You disgust me! Underneath you're an old and shriveled woman!
How exactly this killed her? Not sure, since most of this movie had her jumping out of windows no problem, but whatever, maybe a branch went through her heart. As he walks back in the apartment, he's confronted by a now vampire Paul. Paul throws him through a chair, and when Paul goes to pounce, David strikes him with one of the chair's pieces through the heart. Eventually the police arrive, and they end up finding the coffin where Desire slept, complete with soil inside. Detective Van Ness takes David to the police station and fabricates a version of the story that doesn't make him sound like a crazy person. David, being a crazy person, is stubborn about signing the witness statement that wouldn't send him to prison for a double homicide, and Van Ness breaks down that he needs to get himself together, basically telling him that he believes David, but the way he's going about it only makes people think he's nuts. He also says he's talked to Cheryl for him, who will come pick him up. He eventually signs a statement, and when he gets outside, Cheryl embraces him and kisses him, and the movie ends with us seeing that he's being followed by a male vampire. And not just any vampire, but the film's first victim. Thanks for watching. If you like this content, please leave a like and subscribe, and hit the bell icon to know every time I update. If you want to help my channel grow, please check out my Patreon, where you can get access to content early, as well as see the content that can't be uploaded here on YouTube. Link will be in the description. Until next time.